Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to Audiobook Dynasty. If you want early access and even more parts for free, make sure to join me on Patreon. Chapter 61, Project Excalibur. Later, Asia, Rias and I were in my room. Asia was sitting on the edge of the bed while Rias was pacing up and down in shock. Rias, why did Kiba react like that when he heard about the Excaliburs? I asked, although I already knew the answer. Rias stopped walking and sighed deeply. Her eyes met mine and I could see the sadness and pain in them. Leonard, this is a long story, but I think the time has come for you and Asia to know the truth about Kiba. She sat down in a chair next to the table, crossing her legs and resting her elbows on her knees. Kiba. Yueto Kiba is not only a knight in my family. He is a survivor. Years ago, he was part of a terrible church project called Project Excalibur. Project Excalibur. Asia repeated. Yes. This Catholic church project aimed to create superpowered exorcists capable of wielding the holy sword Excalibur. To do this, the church kidnapped orphaned children or children from poor families, those who would have no one to question their disappearance. They were subjected to grueling training and painful rituals involving gas, all in an attempt to increase their compatibility with the sword. The church? How horrible! Asia murmured as tears began to form in her eyes. It was a dark time for the church. Children who couldn't stand the trial died. And those who survived, well, Kiba is the only one I know who survived. He watched his friends die one by one every day without being able to do anything to help them. The silence in the room was almost palpable. Asia wiped away a tear running down her cheek. Poor Kiba, he must have suffered so much. And he carries these scars to this day. Finally, Kiba managed to escape. The only one who did. Still, he was almost dead when I found him lying in the snow. I had gone to Italy to observe some things and finding him in that forest was pure coincidence. I like to think that both he and I were lucky. I clenched my fists. The monsters who did it, did they pay for it? Rias sighed. Rias sighed. Some of them did. The project in question was headed by a man named Valper Galilei, who was excommunicated and given the title of Genocide Archbishop. I thought the day would come when these issues would confront us in Kuaha, but that day came sooner than I expected. Now all those painful memories must have come back to Kiba all at once. That's why he wants to destroy all the fragments of Excalibur. For him, those swords are a symbol of all the suffering he and his colleagues have gone through. Exactly, Rias confirmed. And that's why we have to be very careful how we handle this. Kiba is in a very fragile emotional state and anything could cause him to make irrational decisions driven by hatred. And what do you want to do, Rias? There is not much to do, really. Although Kiba is closely involved in this matter, my brother has always advised me not to interfere in the affairs of the church and to let them deal with their own problems. Kiba knows that my hands are tied, which is why he didn't ask or request anything when he left the factory. Asia, still wiping away tears, stood up resolutely. But I want to help. Kiba is our friend and I can't bear to see him suffer like this. I put my hand on her shoulder, feeling the same urge. If Rias says it's best not to act, then we will. I said to Asia, even though I knew I wouldn't follow that advice myself. I'm glad you understand. Rias stood up from her chair. Now let's go to sleep, because we have classes tomorrow. Then Rias started to unbutton her skirt. Rias, why are you? Asia asked, completely flushed, only to be interrupted by Rias' soft laughter. I can only sleep well naked, Rias replied with disconcerting naturalness. I hope you don't mind. She took off her skirt and placed it carefully on the chair. Then she started to unbutton her blouse. My face flushed. I couldn't help but stare at the scene. In a few seconds, Rias had already removed her blouse and bra, leaving only her panties. Asia, who was standing next to me, saw me staring at Rias and quickly started to undress as well. I was paralyzed for a moment, not knowing what to do or say in this situation. Seeing Asia so determined to compete with Rias filled my heart. Asia, you don't have to. I started, but she interrupted me with a determined look. If Rias can sleep naked, so can I. In a matter of seconds, Asia was as naked as Rias and I found myself in a completely new and uncomfortable situation. Rias approached my bed and lay down with a satisfied sigh. Come on, let's go to sleep. It's late. I hesitated, but Asia took my hand and pulled me gently onto the bed. Come on, Leonard. It's going to be okay. I lay down between Rias and Asia, feeling the warmth of their naked bodies next to me. Rias turned off the lamp, plunging the room into a cozy darkness. Silence reigned again. That was all well and good, but the big problem was that they were both naked, each holding me on one side, and I couldn't do anything with either of them, because Rias didn't know about my relationship with Asia, and Asia didn't know about Rias. In time, the excitement gave way to an overwhelming fatigue. My mind began to calm down, and gradually the weight on my eyelids became unbearable. At some point, without knowing exactly when, I fell asleep. I woke up in the middle of the night with a dry mouth and an urgent need to go to the bathroom. I carefully untangled myself from Asia and Rias's arms, trying not to wake them. The room was dark, but the dim light from the hallway helped guide my steps as I made my way to the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator, grabbed a bottle of water, took a few sips, and then walked to the bathroom, still a little sleepy. As I entered, I turned on the light and went to the toilet to urinate. The sound of water against porcelain echoed softly in the small room. I was lost in sleepy thoughts when I heard the bathroom door open. Asia? What are you doing here? I asked, trying to keep my voice low. She didn't answer. Instead, she shut the door behind her. I was surprised to see Asia enter the bathroom. She was wearing only panties and didn't look surprised at all. Asia? What are you doing here? She closed and locked the door behind her and took a step towards me. The look on her face left no doubt as to her intentions. Leonard, I still can't sleep. Asia, we can't. I began, but my voice trailed off when I saw the look on his face. Leonard, I need you. I'm so wet, she confessed, blushing slightly but not looking away. Asia then leaned back against the sink and spread her legs slightly. The movement was slow and I couldn't look away. The light from the bathroom reflected off the fluid oozing from her vagina. I tried to take a step back, but my body seemed frozen. Asia. We can't do this, not with Rias here, in the apartment. Leonard, we did it at her place, in the guest bed she slept in with you. Why can't we do it now, while she's sleeping? His words were logical, but the situation was far from simple. My heart and mind were at odds. I knew that giving in to this temptation could complicate everything between the three of us, but the lustful way Asia looked at me made it difficult to think rationally. This is different. She's here, in the same place. What if she wakes up? She won't wake up. Asia replied, taking my right hand and placing it on her cheek. The intensity of her words, the clear desire in her eyes, and the fact that it was Asia who was asking for sex were enough to make my mind go blank. My hand moved almost on its own, caressing the side of her face before running down her neck, feeling the softness of her skin. Asia sighed at the touch and leaned even closer to me. Please, Leonard, she whispered, her hands finding my chest and sliding down to cradle my cock. I want to feel you like I did that day. My body has been craving it ever since you marked me. My instincts took over. Before I knew it, my hands were on her thighs, lifting her up so she could sit in the sink. Are you sure? I asked, my voice husky with desire. Asia agreed immediately and our lips met with desperate hunger, our tongues exploring each other's mouths, our bodies pressing against each other. Asia wrapped her legs around my waist and pulled me closer. The moment our bodies met, all rationality disappeared. She pulled off my shirt, urging me to go further. I slid my hands up her thighs, lifting her a little more so that our bodies lined up perfectly. When I took off my pants, I played with rubbing my penis against the entrance of her vagina a few times, but suddenly she grabbed my cock and placed it at the entrance, looking serious. Leonard, now. I can't wait any longer, she whispered. With one quick motion, I entered her. Asia gasped and closed her eyes as she threw her head back, surrendering to the sensation. The small white-tiled bathroom, once cold and impersonal, was now a scene of lust and burning desire. The misty mirror reflected our intertwined forms, creating an almost dreamlike image of our desire. Leonard, Asia whispered again, and her arms tightened around my neck, bringing our faces even closer together so that I could see every nuance of her expression. As we began to move together, our bodies molding to each other, Asia let out a soft moan, almost inaudible, but full of pleasure. Her legs around my waist pulled me further into her. This is incredible. I'm really going to get addicted to this. Asia, I'm going to make your vagina look like mine tonight, I whispered into her ear, kissing her lobe gently. She smiled, that sweet, innocent smile that always disarmed me, but now carried a hint of malice. Each thrust was deep and slow, an erotic dance that brought us to the brink of madness. Asia arched her back, her breasts pressing against my chest as her moans grew louder and echoed through the bathroom. Why yes, Leonard, like this, she murmured, her voice trembling with pleasure. My hands explored her body, running down her back to her buttocks, squeezing gently as I increased the intensity of my thrusts. The sight of a girl who had once been so innocent giving in to pleasure was intoxicating and I couldn't help myself. Leonard. I can't hold it in, she said between moans, her body shivering. I knew she was close, but I didn't want us to finish so quickly. With a great effort I slowed down, trying to prolong the moment. Calm down, Asia, I whispered, kissing her sweaty forehead. If you talk too loud, Rias will wake up. Yes, Leonard, let's make this last. I carefully helped her down from the sink. Asia turned and pressed her hands against the mirror, leaning forward slightly. The sight of her bare back and the curve of her buttocks was too tempting to resist. I placed my hands on her hips. Asia looked over her shoulder. Please, Leonard. Without hesitation, I entered her again, and we began to move in sync. The sound of our bodies and the lubricating liquid echoed through the bathroom. Leonard, faster! She pressed her cheek against the mirror, her moans growing louder and more urgent. I put a hand over her mouth, muffling her moans, and she saw her own reflection in the mirror. However, instead of being embarrassed or ashamed of looking harmful, she saw my expression of pure pleasure and liked it. So she began to help me by moving her hips back and forth. Our bodies were in sync at that moment, which made everything even better. The feeling of my cock moving inside Asia was addictive, as if our bodies were made for each other. I could feel every muscle in her tight vagina completely squeezing my cock, and she let go more and more. Leonard. That's it, she moaned. Asia, I whispered in her ear as I continued to penetrate her hard. Have you ever thought about how different this is from what you expected your life to be? She moaned in response, trying to form words as I held her tight. Yes, it's all so different. I never imagined this. A former nun, I continued, breathing heavily, having sex in the bathroom with her demon master in the next room. Isn't that ironic? Asia opened her eyes and found her own reflection in the mirror. She laughed softly, a laugh full of irony and acceptance. Yes, it is ironic. But I don't regret it. Being a devil, being with you, this is where I belong. Her words made me smile. The intensity of her feelings, the way she embraced this new life, was something I deeply admired. Don't you feel any guilt? I asked, increasing the speed of my movements. At first, yes. But now, all I feel is joy. And love. And desire. Her voice resonated deeply with me, and I felt a wave of emotion that almost made me lose control. I kissed the curve of her neck, nibbling lightly on her skin. You're perfect, Asia. She smiled and looked back into the mirror. So are you, Leonard. You make me feel things I never imagined. Asia, I whispered, do you think Rias can hear us? Her eyes opened a little wider, and she smiled mischievously. Maybe, but that just makes everything more fun, don't you think? Yes, the thought of Rias listening in and possibly catching us in the act made it all the more fun. You're a bit of a pervert, I teased, kissing her shoulder. I learned from the best, she replied with a soft laugh. Still inside her, I slowed down to prolong the pleasure, moving slowly and precisely. Asia, let's change positions. She nodded, and I slowly lifted her from her position against the mirror. I helped her turn towards me and our eyes met again. I lifted her up, and she wrapped her legs around my waist. Leonard, I want you so much. I pressed her against the wall with a firm motion. Her bare back met the coolness of the tiles, forming a duality with the high temperature of her body. I entered her again and she let out a muffled moan, biting my shoulder to keep from making too much noise. That's it. We have to be quiet. We don't want to wake Rias. Asia laughed softly. You say that, but I think you like the idea of her listening to us. Maybe I do, but that doesn't mean we have to be careless. She nodded and held me tightly. Then let's do this right. I continued to move her against the wall, our bodies colliding in perfect rhythm. Asia moaned softly, her eyes closed in pure ecstasy. The sound of our passion echoed throughout the bathroom. You're so beautiful, Asia. So perfect. She opened her eyes and smiled at me. And you make me feel that way. I can't imagine my life without you now, Leonard. Her words were a balm to my soul, and I felt even more connected to her. Neither can I replied, kissing her fervently. Minutes passed, maybe an hour, but it felt like an eternity, with every touch, every moan etched in my memory. The soft sound of Asia's breathing, the feel of her muscles squeezing me, it all created a sensation of pleasure that I never wanted to end. Before I knew it, I was sitting on the toilet and Asia was grinding her pussy on my cock. As the intensity of the moment seemed to be at its peak, I pulled her into a deep kiss. She moaned against my mouth, her movements becoming slower but more intense. Leonard, heart suit. I hugged her tightly, feeling her body shake against mine. Asia, take it easy or I'll come. Come inside me, Leonard. On. Come, because I'm coming too. With those words, I felt the control slip from my hands. The pressure I'd felt inside me exploded, and I let out a moan of pure pleasure as I came all over her. Asia followed me, her body shaking in a climax that seemed to echo my own. The sound of our heavy breathing filled the room for the next moment. Asia, still panting, rested her head on my shoulder, her blonde hair clinging to her forehead with sweat. Are you okay? I murmured, running my hand down her back. She smiled against my skin and let out a satisfied sigh. I've never felt better, Leonard. You make me feel so alive. You make me feel that way too, Asia, I replied, kissing the side of her head. But I think we should pull ourselves together before Rias wakes up. She laughed, a soft, happy laugh. Yes, but I think I should take a shower before I go back to bed. Slowly, helping her up, I pulled away from her, and the feeling of emptiness was immediate. Asia sat up, stretching her arms and moaning softly as she felt her muscles relax. Would you like to join me in the bathroom, she suggested, winking at me. I can help you wash your back. That's tempting, I replied, smiling, but I think I'll let you get cleaned up first. I have to get back to the room before Rias realizes we are both gone. All right. I'll take a quick shower and then I'll be back. As she headed for the shower, I grabbed a hanging towel and started drying off. Watching her walk around the small bathroom area naked was a pleasure in itself. Asia turned on the shower and soon the sound of running water filled the room, mixed with her soft moans of satisfaction as she felt the hot water. After dressing, I left the bathroom, carefully closing the door behind me. The hallway was quiet, but there was no sign of movement nearby. As I entered the bedroom, the cozy darkness enveloped me. The room was as warm and peaceful as before, the bed was unmade and inviting. I lay down, feeling the immediate comfort of the mattress. I turned onto my side and closed my eyes, hoping that sleep would come quickly. Then I felt an extra weight move, and a soft, provocative voice whispered in my ear. You're very naughty, Leonard. Ria's voice whispered in an ironic tone. You turned Asia from an innocent nun into a girl addicted to your enormous cock. My body froze for a moment, my heart pounding. I slowly turned to meet Ria's bright blue eyes. Her face was just inches from mine, a mischievous smile on her lips. My body froze for a moment as I heard Rias whisper in my ear. I slowly turned to meet her blue eyes, her face just inches from mine, a mischievous smile on her lips. You really are very, very naughty, Leonard. Is all that libido because of your special incubus power? I swallowed, trying to remain calm. Rias, I didn't know you were awake. She laughed softly. I just woke up. Do you really think you can make that much noise in the bathroom without me noticing? Her hand slid down my chest, tracing a heart. You're a little selfish yourself, you know that? You took all the fun for yourself. I started to get up, but she moved closer and pressed her breasts against me. She was hot for some reason, very hot. But it's okay. Okay. Yes, because while Asia is in the shower, I'm going to have some fun with you, too. Rias slid her hand down, her fingers caressing my stomach before finding their way to my penis. It was already half erect, but with her touch, it quickly became fully hard. Look at that. You're ready for me, aren't you? She didn't wait for an answer. Moving with the grace of a predator, Rias climbed down and positioned herself between my legs, her gaze fixed on my cock. You've been very naughty, Leonard. You even did this to me in the club room. But I'm going to teach you a lesson. I won't stop until Asia opens the door. Wait. Ah. Rias ran her tongue over the head of my penis, eliciting a soft moan from me. This is just the beginning. She whispered before wrapping her warm, wet mouth around the head of my penis. She began to suck me, moving her mouth up and down, her soft lips and agile tongue working together to create an overwhelming sensation of pleasure. My breathing became heavy and I couldn't look away from her. Rias stared at me as she sucked me with eyes full of lust and determination. The movements of her mouth, the touch of her tongue, the fingers that caressed my testicles and squeezed them lightly. I felt everything was very sensitive, perhaps because I had just come. The room was plunged into a sensual darkness, the white curtains blocking out most of the morning light that was slowly coming in. The heat from Ria's body was almost suffocating, her presence imposing like a predator about to devour its prey. The touch of her fingers against my skin, the warmth of her body pressed against mine, all seemed to amplify the electric current of desire pulsing between us. Rias was determined to make me pay for my wickedness and I had no doubt that she would keep her promise. She paused for a moment, and her eyes slowly rose to meet mine. You know, Leonard, sometimes I think you need to learn to share. After all, you have all this energy, all this need. Rias, I didn't really think you'd mind. She laughed teasingly. It's not that it bothers me, exactly. It's just that I think it's my duty as your master to make sure you're, well, taken care of. I felt a shiver run through my body, my mind struggling to process her words. Before I could respond, Rias had her hot mouth on my cock again and was gripping my thighs tightly. The pleasure was instantaneous, an overwhelming wave that left me breathless. You like this, don't you? You like being my plaything, my obedient servant? I tried to answer, tried to deny it, but my words came out as a hoarse moan. Rias laughed again, her mouth never ceasing to move. Don't worry, Leonard. I know just what you need. His fingers caressed my testicles, squeezing lightly, sending waves of pleasure through my body. Did you know that while I'm doing this to you, I feel like I'm in a threesome? She asked. Why? A while ago you fucked Asia and now I'm sucking the cock that was in her. It's like I'm with two of my servants at the same time. Something I would normally reject if I knew some devil was doing it, but here I am, sucking off one of my servants in such an obscene way. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The idea of Rias, the proud and powerful Rias, allowing herself to express such a thought aloud was almost unbelievable. It makes me wonder, if even Asia would give in to you, wouldn't that be a problem for both of us? She began to climb up my body and positioned herself over me, her eyes on mine as she slid down. Fuck here and now. I could feel the heat of her body, the pressure of her thighs against my hips, the soft touch of her lips as she leaned down, her breasts brushing against my chest. Her face was so close that I could see every detail, every shadow of desire that passed through her eyes. You're acting dominant, but you're ashamed of what you just said, aren't you? I held her face with both hands, seeing how flushed she was. And no. At that moment, I brought my lips to hers and we both lost ourselves in a fierce kiss. The intense kiss between me and Rias Gremory sent my mind into a state of almost pure ecstasy and happiness. Without realizing it, I was captured by the mixture of pleasure and desire between us. Her body was pressed against mine, her moving thighs rubbing against my hips. My penis was between the lips of her vagina, perfectly erect and ready to enter, but she only teased me with it. Rias had her eyes on mine as she slid my cock between the lips of her vagina. She was enjoying herself. The heat emanating from her was almost suffocating when mixed with the promise of impending pleasure that made me lose control. She slowly moved her hips down and then up, and the provocation was so intense that it almost made me come. Still, I couldn't look away from her face, flushed with desire. There was a glint in her eyes that was both lustful and vulnerable, a combination that made my heart beat even harder. Her hands gripped my shoulders, and she moved her hips until the head of my cock was almost inside her, but she stopped. Leonard. Do you know how much I want to feel you inside me? I can, can't I? Her hurtful words hit me like a bolt of lightning and I felt my own need grow. My hands slid down her back, feeling every curve, every line of her perfect body. I wanted to feel all the warmth of her insides enveloping me. As Rias rose to finally thrust my cock into her, a small sound broke the silence of the surrounding darkness. The sound of footsteps, light and almost imperceptible, came from the corridor. Rias froze. Her eyes were still on mine, but now with a wary expression. It was then that we realized that the sound of the shower had stopped and footsteps were approaching the bedroom door. We both stopped. Asia. I whispered, the word barely escaping my lips. Rias blinked, as if a broken spell had brought her back to reality. Asia entered the room, still drying her hair with a towel. The soft steam from her recent bath surrounded her like an aura. Her face was relaxed, a small smile of satisfaction playing on her lips as her eyes met ours. Rias and I were lying on the bed, each facing in one direction, breathing in a controlled manner as if we were really asleep as we were pretending to be. Asia approached the bed, the smile still on her lips. She let out a small sigh, as if relieved or perhaps even pleased by the scene she had found. They're asleep. She muttered to herself. Asia then lay down on the bed, positioning herself next to me and opposite Rias. Her freshly bathed body contrasted with the temperature Rias and I had shared moments before. She snuggled between us, her arm resting gently on my chest as she adjusted to the mattress. Asia's presence brought an unexpected calm. Her breathing soon stabilized, indicating that she had fallen back asleep quickly, still smiling with the peace of mind that seemed to accompany her. While she slept, I kept my eyes closed for a while. My body was still on alert, desire still pulsing through my veins and in my cock. Beside me, Rias seemed to be awake as well. I knew she was thinking the same thing I was, about what almost happened and what could have been if Asia hadn't stepped in. After what seemed like an eternity, Rias stirred slightly. Her face turned to mine. Our eyes met again, but this time there was a mutual understanding that we both wanted it more than ever. It wasn't just carnal desire that had almost brought us together that day, but a real, whole feeling. We may not have done it yet, but the ultimate moment was not far away. Asterisk. When I opened my eyes, the soft light of dawn was flooding the room. I stood up slowly, feeling the sheet slide over my skin as I straightened. A brief shiver ran through my body as I remembered what I had done to Asia and Rias in the early hours of the morning. Now, however, my bed was empty, without the comforting warmth of their bodies beside me. A sigh escaped my lips with a bit of melancholy. I got out of bed, feeling the cold floor against my bare feet, and headed for the door. As I walked down the hall, the tantalizing aroma of freshly brewed coffee and something being prepared in the kitchen filled the air, drawing me like a moth to the light. When I reached the kitchen, I saw Asia with her back to me. She was already wearing her school uniform, and over it an apron that brought back a memory. She seemed to be in a world of her own, concentrating on the task of preparing breakfast. Good morning, Asia. She turned to me with a warm smile and a slight flush in her cheeks. Good morning, Leo. Did you sleep well? Yes, very well, I replied, coming over and sitting down at the table. Me too, wonderfully well. Asia's smile continued, but she turned her attention back to the frying pan. Where's Rias? She already went to the club. She said she had to take care of something important. Did she look worried? Asia put the pan down after turning off the heat and came over to set a plate for me. She was thoughtful. But Rias always seems to be in control. I trust she always knows what she's doing. I nodded. Rias was strong and determined, but I knew that even she had her doubts, especially after meeting 2 church exorcists in her territory and seeing one of her servants as shaken as Kiba seemed to be. Sensing my silence, Asia placed her hand gently on mine. Do you think what happened yesterday might be bothering her more than it seems? I asked, looking at her hand. What happened? My reaction triggered memories in Asia, and that's when she realized she was touching me. I mean, you know. The 2 exorcists. Oh. Is that what this is about? Hee. Of course it is. I know the exorcists aren't on our side, but they won't harm the town, right? Asia turned to me, looking a little scared. I think their main concern isn't exactly the exorcists we met yesterday, but Kiba and the fallen angels. Yesterday, the exorcists said that the fallen angels didn't really leave the city. They just retreated a bit after Rias threatened them. Having them hide so close to us leaves us vulnerable, and I believe that is Rias' concern at the moment. If they're still here, that means Yama. Asia remembered the story I had told her about my encounter with Yama. Yes, that means she's here, too. It was a mistake to let her live, I said, clasping my hands together. The day at school was strangely normal, but I felt a strange tension in the air. Even though it seemed like a normal day without any problems, passing my clubmates in the school corridors made me sure that all their hearts were clouded with uncertainty, just like mine. Classes went by in a blur and I just went with the flow, barely paying attention to the content. Kiba's absence was obvious, and I wasn't the only one who noticed it. Rias, usually so controlled and calm, seemed distant, almost absent-minded. As she walked through the corridors of Kua Academy and sighs of emotion escaped the mouths of the boys who had her as their school muse, she didn't even react to those sighs, as if she couldn't hear them. When the final bell rang, signaling the end of classes, I automatically went to the club room. The door was already ajar. When I pushed it open, I found the other members of the Occult Research Club already gathered. Rias was sitting behind her usual desk, one hand resting on her chin while her eyes were fixed on an undefined point on the table in front of her. Akeno was next to her, but he didn't have her usual closed smile. Konako leaned against the window, her arms crossed, her expressionless gaze sweeping the room as if she expected something to happen at any moment. And Asia, who was standing next to me, looked even more nervous than in the morning. Rias, where's Kiba? The question came out of my mouth. Rias slowly raised her eyes and met mine. She sighed, an almost imperceptible sound. He didn't come to school today. It was rare for Kiba to miss school, and the fact that he hadn't shown any signs of life since the meeting with the exorcists only added to our worries. Do you think this has something to do with what happened yesterday? Akeno asked, breaking the silence. I'm pretty sure, Rias replied. Kiba has his own reasons for avoiding contact with the church, but the presence of those exorcists must have moved him in a way that even we cannot fully understand. He must be conducting his own search for the Excalibur mentioned by those exorcists. We must look for him. He could be in danger if he isn't already. Konako suggested. I agree. Rias, I know you normally wouldn't interfere in church affairs and we don't necessarily have to. But if Kiba wants to act anyway, we'd better be with him. Rias was silent for a moment. The city is large and he could be anywhere. We have to split up and cover as much ground as possible. Her answer brought relief to the anxious hearts of the girls in the room. Konako smiled, while Asia clasped her hands and smiled happily. How about the shrine park, suggested Akeno, still serious. Maybe she was the only one besides me and Rias who understood what it meant to interfere in church affairs. He likes to train there when he needs some time to himself. That's a good possibility. Leo and Asia, you can go to the park. It's the one near the center. Konako, you look around the school grounds in case he's around. Akeno and I will go to the area near the abandoned church. Church? Asia asked worriedly. Asia remembered that 3 days after she had become a demon, Rias had told her that the town's church had been completely abandoned and that all the nuns had disappeared. She also remembered that Rias had ordered Asia never to go near the church because it could be dangerous. Kiba knows that if the fallen angels are still in the city, they're hiding not far from that church. It's an area we demons avoid. So Kiba might have thought that if he went there, he would find clues about the whereabouts of the fallen angels or something like that. Asia didn't seem to get any less worried by Rias' answer. Then the red-haired devil stood up, walked around their table and said to Asia. Don't worry, Asia. We won't hurt anyone from the church when we find them. The only problem is the fallen angels. But when Akeno and I are together, not even they can threaten us. A relieved smile appeared on Asia's face, and her emerald green eyes sparkled with happiness. We all nodded, ready to act, but before any of us could move, an intense glow filled the room, followed by the sound of a portal opening. I instinctively turned to face the source of the light, but relaxed a bit when I saw who was emerging from the portal. Sana Satrai, the president of the student council, appeared in front, her posture impeccable. Behind her were Tsubaki, her vice president, and Saji, her pawn. Sana, what are you doing here? Rias asked. I heard your horse was missing. I thought you could use some help. Rias seemed to hesitate for a moment, but accepted the offer. I appreciate it, Sana. Any help is welcome when we're dealing with the church and the fallen angels at the same time. Tsubaki stepped forward and raised her glasses slightly with a finger. The more people, the greater the chance of finding him quickly. We can check a large area of the city with the other members of the student council, Sana suggested. If Kiba tries to deal with the fallen angels on his own, it won't be easy to find him. But if we use our wings and look from above, it will be easier. That's a good idea. Rias agreed. If anything happens, contact us immediately. We can't risk losing him. Leo, why don't we go to Sanctuary Park? That's what Rias asked, right? Asia looked at me and asked. Rias asked us to go there, but the likelihood of finding Kiba there is very small. He's smart. If he's still avoiding everyone, he wouldn't go to such an obvious place. Asia frowned slightly. So, where are we going? And why? I smiled, trying to ease the tension. We're going to a place where we can meet two people who will probably help us find Kiba. They are, Irina and Zenovia. If we find them, the chances of finding Kiba right away are very high. Asia's eyes widened slightly when she heard the names of the exorcists. Irina and Zenovia, do you think they'll help us? I'm not sure if they'll help us directly, but Kiba is obsessed with the Excaliburs. If he doesn't find any clues about them, it's very likely that he'll hang around these two exorcists to take advantage of their investigation. If we find Irina and Zenovia, Kiba will be one step away. Asia seemed to understand, and I could see that my words calmed her a little. Her face became charged, and she even offered a small smile in response to mine. I see. So where do we look for them? She asked. There are a few places in the city that could serve as hiding places or bases for them, I explained, turning my attention to the city streets as we walked. The most logical would be to start with the places that have some connection to the church or that offer some kind of sanctuary. There's the larger church where you stayed for a few days, but they probably won't go there knowing that the fallen angels are here and that Rias is after the fallen angels. Let's go to the central square. There's an old chapel that they've recently renovated. If we don't find them there, we can try the surrounding area. We walked side by side through the streets of the city, which were beginning to fill with the end of the day's activity. The central square was relatively quiet, with only a few people strolling around or resting on the benches. In the center of the square stood the old chapel with its ancient stone facade. As we approached the chapel, I felt a slight change in the atmosphere, an almost imperceptible sensation of divine energy, something familiar to a demon like me. Asia and I shouldn't normally approach a place like this. But I knew that nothing would happen to us. The chapel doors were open, and the soft candlelight was spilling out, casting flickering shadows on the stone steps. I reached for the door and Asia tugged at the fabric of my shirt. What are you doing, Leo? Demons aren't allowed in the house of God. Don't worry. My heart isn't that of a demon, I'll be fine. Just stay here. What? Just stay here and watch over us. I'll explain later. That last part, about my heart, was something only Rias Gremory knew. To most, I was just a demon of considerable power, a bearer of boosted gear who had managed to do the unthinkable, kill Razor Phoenix. But what most didn't know, not even my companions, was the price I paid for all that power. I vividly remember the moment I made the pact with Drake, the Red Dragon Empress. Even before I fought Razor Phoenix, I knew I would lose, or if I won with holy water, I would keep Razor Phoenix's garbage alive. I wasn't strong enough, fast enough, or even magically skilled enough to face an enemy as powerful and regenerative as he was. So I asked Drake to give me her powers, and she offered me an alternative. You want my power, Leonard, is that it? Her voice echoed in my mind, deep and resonant. If you really want to defeat Razor Phoenix, you'll have to give me something in return. Power does not come without sacrifice. I knew that any deal with Drake would come at a price. What do you want? A part of you. So, take my heart. Your heart? Drake asked, a little hesitantly. It is the source of your life. If you give me your heart, I can give you enough power to overcome any obstacle, but I know. My life will be yours. It was a risky move, a pact that could very well mean my ruin in the future, but I needed power, a lot of power, not only to face Razor but also for the future. Well done, boy. Your heart is mine now. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, as if something was being ripped out of me, and then everything went dark for a brief moment. When I regained consciousness, the power coursing through my veins was different. My heart was no longer beating on its own. It belonged to Drake, and my life was bound to her will. Why the heart? because, as Drake explained, the more vital the organ, the more power it could grant. The heart was the logical choice because it kept my human essence intact, at least in part. The only other organ that could give me more power would be my brain, but that would make me something inhuman. It wouldn't be me. The heart, on the other hand, allowed me to remain myself, even if I was at the mercy of the dragon. Luckily, I had a good relationship with Drake, and after the pact I got my first 3 hearts from her. What's more, with a dragon's heart, I no longer had most of the disadvantages that a devil would have. I could even pray to God if I wanted to and touch holy objects, which was a bit confusing since my body was probably still that of a devil. Perhaps what really mattered for these things was the heart. When I finally pushed open the door, the sound of its ancient hinges echoed through the silent room, accompanying my steps as I entered. The divine energy that permeated the air immediately enveloped me, as if I had crossed an invisible barrier that recognized my nature. If I were just a human, I probably wouldn't notice it, not so clearly, but as a supernatural being, perhaps half demon and half dragon, I could feel it. The chapel's high ceiling was supported by sturdy arches, and small stained glass windows adorned the sides. The familiar smell of wax and scented incense filled the air, an almost sacred combination that penetrated deep into the soul. To my right, the rows of old wooden pews were unoccupied, except for 1 or 2 spots where isolated worshippers were immersed in silent prayer. They did not raise their heads to look at me as I passed, perhaps because they did not feel the weight of my presence, or perhaps because they were too lost in their own prayers. I moved cautiously, aware of every step I took on this sacred ground. Despite my initial confidence, there was a part of me that couldn't completely ignore the discomfort of being there. It was as if I was entering forbidden territory, crossing a line that should have been impassable. I slowly approached the main altar, where a large wooden cross adorned the wall behind a table covered with a white pall. An old priest was standing there, holding a rosary in his hands. He didn't seem to notice me, and I wasn't interested in him, anyway. At the back of the chapel was a door, half hidden by a large wooden panel. I narrowed my eyes and walked towards it without wasting any more time. When I reached the door, I put my hand on the cold handle and turned it slowly, opening the door enough for me to pass through without making much noise. The corridor behind the door was narrow and poorly lit, the walls were bare stone and the wooden floor creaked slightly under my feet. There were no windows for light to enter, only small lamps. After a few meters, the corridor widened slightly, revealing a small room at the back. It was then that the voices grew louder. I think we should at least try the McDonald's here in Japan. I remember it was really good, but back in Rome it's rubbish, Irina said. We're not here for that. Who knows, after we've done what we have to do here. Irina and Zenovia were there, just as I had suspected. They had their backs to me and were talking naturally. Irina, with her blonde hair pinned up and parted in 2 directions, wore her light exorcist armor, while Zenovia, with her short blue hair, wore a similar uniform. They were chatting as they adjusted some details of their outfits. I leaned against the wall and remained silent, watching them for a moment without trying to hide. I knew they might react aggressively, so I decided to be more diplomatic. You look busy. I said. The 2 exorcists reacted immediately. Zenovia spun on her heels, her hand moving quickly to the sword on the table, while Irina seemed less attentive. Who's there? Zenovia asked, pointing the destroyer Excalibur at me. When she finally recognized me, her face grew stern. A demon. What are you doing here? Calm down, I didn't come here to fight, I said, keeping my tone under control. I came here because I need your help. Zenovia didn't lower her sword, her eyes evaluating every word I said. Irina, on the other hand, seemed a little more open, although she was still on guard. So what do you want? Zenovia asked. Your help. You're after the Excaliburs, aren't you? So am I. Irina raised an eyebrow. A demon interested in the Excalibur? Isn't that a little contradictory? You want to destroy them, just like your other friend. I smiled sideways, recognizing the irony in the situation. I don't know. My interests are a little more flexible. I'm not interested in the swords themselves. It's what they represent and who's looking for them that interests me. Zenovia finally lowered the sword, but still held it firmly, ready to act at any moment. And why isn't Rias Gremory here to speak with us? Why send a subordinate? The dismissive tone in her voice didn't go unnoticed, but I let it pass. I knew her trust in me was fragile. Rias would need a strong reason to deal directly with the church. She's a pure demon, and frankly, the relationship between the 2 factions is complicated, to say the least. But I don't need a trigger. My goal here is to keep the Excaliburs from falling into the wrong hands, and in that, our interests align. And what exactly are you proposing? We want the swords back, but that doesn't mean we need help. Zenovia said. I know this city, every nook and cranny, every shadow. You're in uncharted territory, and the people with those swords are dangerous. A temporary alliance is in everyone's best interest. I can be your eyes and ears here while you focus on fighting for the swords. Zenobia gave a short, dry laugh and shook her head negatively. We don't need a guide. We already have enough clues about the fallen angels in this city. Fallen angels? I muttered, as if thinking about her words. The clue you have, is the church on the hill, right? Zenobia froze for a moment, and though she tried to hide it, I could see the surprise in her eyes. It was a small detail, but enough to know that I was on the right track. How do you know that? I shrugged, as if it were something trivial. It's obvious, isn't it? If you're hunting fallen angels who have some interest in the Excaliburs, then the church that was their base would be one of the first places to investigate. But let me be clear, going there alone would be a mistake. Irina frowned and took a step forward. Why do you care so much? We don't need a demon's worries. I moved a little closer to show that I wasn't afraid of her. Because you're not dealing with some fallen angel. Do you know who's behind this? Zenobia tightened her grip on her sword. If you know something, tell me. Cockabile. When I mentioned the name Cockabile, everything in the room changed. Zenobia and Irina looked at each other briefly, and the impact of the relevance of the name I had just uttered was undeniable. They both knew exactly who Cockabile was and what he stood for. Cockabile, one of the leaders of the fallen angels. He shouldn't be here. What is he planning? Zenobia asked. He plans to get what he's always wanted. Cockabile is a veteran warrior, a born strategist, so he is also a being deeply obsessed with the war that never ended. To him, peace between the races is a farce, a pause that serves no purpose other than to allow his enemies to regroup. And he is determined to finish what he started. Irina shifted uneasily, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. And how do you know this? What makes you think he's behind all this? She asked me. All you need to know is that I'm not just guessing, I replied, moving a little closer to her with my hands raised. Cockabile has a strange vision, so to speak. He wants to provoke a new holy war, not just between angels and devils, but between all factions. To him, peace is a betrayal of the true purpose of existence, and the Excaliburs, with all their symbolism, are the key to rekindling the flames of war. And where do you fit into all this? A demon trying to stop the war? It doesn't make sense. I smiled slightly, sensing the slight hint of irony in her words. Why not? A war doesn't help anyone right now, especially not us demons. And, let's face it, the only one who could stand up to Cockabile right now and come out victorious would be Vala Lucifer. Vala Lucifer, someone whose ambition was as great as the power he possessed, was a figure shrouded in mystery, and the mention of his name alongside Cockabile's only added to the gravity of the situation. And what makes you think Vala Lucifer would be involved in this? He's not exactly the type to help without a clear motive. Irina asked. I took a moment to lean slightly against the wall, crossing my arms as I considered the answer. Vala Lucifer is an unpredictable variable most of the time, but as soon as the main leader of the fallen angels, Azazel, requests a favor from Vala Lucifer, the white dragon will act. Azazel doesn't know what Cockabile is doing, but he won't act directly, either. And that's not all, is it? There are things you're not telling us. Zenobia asked with a hint of hesitation, as if she was testing the ground to see if I had anything more to say. Why are you giving us all this information? What is your real goal? I felt a small smile appear on my lips. That was it. She was starting to understand. In fact, most devils wouldn't offer valuable information without expecting something in return. Well, most. It was different with me. All I wanted was to stop Cockabile's imminent appearance and get back to my school life of trying to form a harem. So that Zenobia and Irina wouldn't even suspect my reasons for revealing so much to them, I took a high risk that they would refuse. I knew you'd notice. I replied calmly, crossing my arms and walking towards Zenobia. You are both intelligent. Powerful exorcists of the church. You know that no one shares such dangerous secrets without wanting something in return. And what do you want? Irina asked. The Excaliburs, I replied. The reactions were immediate. The shock on Zenovia's face was obvious, while Irina's irritation exploded into an expression of pure disbelief. Her eyes widened, and she took a step back, as if my words had physically hit her. The Excaliburs? You want the Excaliburs? Irina practically shouted in an angry tone. All of them. I knew it. I knew you had evil intentions. How could a devil want something so holy? You won't be able to use it for evil. I raised a hand in a gesture of patience, trying to calm the maelstrom of emotions that were about to explode. Irina's anger was understandable, of course. For someone who had dedicated her life to the church and the divine purpose of the Excaliburs, the idea of a devil like me even touching these sacred weapons was simply abhorrent. Let's take it easy, Irina. I'm not interested in using the Excaliburs for evil. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Think about it, why would I, a devil, want so many weapons capable of killing devils out there, on the loose? Do you really think it's in the interest of someone like me to let those weapons, with all the destructive power they carry, fall into the wrong hands? The truth was that my request made sense from a purely logical perspective. But church morality complicated things, especially for two church warriors who saw the world in terms of light and darkness, good and evil. You also wouldn't want weapons that can easily harm angels to be in the possession of devils like me. You want us to believe that you are acting out of self-preservation? That by obtaining the Excaliburs, you are somehow protecting both angels and devils? That sounds too convenient. Just because it's convenient doesn't mean it's not true. You know, I'm not the only one interested in Excaliburs. There are others, many others, who would do anything to get their hands on them, and not all of them have the same principles as I do. If those weapons fall into the wrong hands, we're all in danger. So let's make a deal. As long as Cockabile is alive and in possession of the Excaliburs, we'll work together. In the end, we'll decide whether to give you the Excaliburs. Zenovia sighed. You seem to know a lot about Cockabile, devil. More than we do. I nodded, accepting her observation. You think you're the only ones with something to lose? If a new holy war starts, the consequences will be catastrophic for all sides. Angels, demons, humans, no one will emerge unscathed. Irina crossed her arms. A devil who talks about stopping a war and at the same time wants to get his hands on the Excaliburs? That sounds contradictory. I'm not asking you to trust me blindly. Just to recognize that our interests are aligned for the moment. You want to keep the Excaliburs out of the wrong hands, and for now, so do I. I want to stop Cockabile from getting them and using them to massacre this town. If we work together, we'll increase our chances of success. Zenovia rested her sword in front of her. Let's say we agree to work with you. What would be the plan? First, we must prepare. The fight against Cockabile will inevitably be brought forward. Cockabile won't wait for us to tell the Surtsks or, in your case, the Angels. I'm afraid he already has at least 5 of the Excaliburs. The other 2 are. My eyes rested on the sword Zenovia had just been resting on, then went to Irina. Our fragments. Irina said with wide eyes. Yes. But we've got luck and a little time. We're one step ahead. If you had acted tonight as planned, at least one of you would have been captured. Then there would be only one sword left for Cockabile to carry out his plan. If that's the case, all we have to do is get out of town and... Zenovia was about to say when I interrupted her. And leave Cockabile with the other 5 fragments of one of the most powerful holy swords? I thought you were here to get them back. Zenovia's eyes dropped, disappointed in herself for forgetting her mission for a few moments. Besides, it doesn't really matter to Cockabile whether he has all the parts of Excalibur or not. One of his servants will be able to put them together, if not all of them, and he wants to destroy the city in any way. Destroy the city? Irina asked in shock. Yes, and if we don't act now, it will happen today. Right now, Rias Gremory and Akeno Heimjima are heading for the church at the top of the hill in Kuaha City. This is the territory of the fallen angels. I don't know who all of Cockabile's allies are, but I'm sure he's working with Valper Galilei. Galilei is the genocide archbishop. Yes. Rias and Akeno will probably find Galilei in the basement of this church. In order not to lose their main pawn, Cockabile will act and attack them, effectively starting the battle that may or may not precede a war between all races. So what are we doing here, still talking? Irina took off her cloak, revealing her extremely short but effective outfit for an agile fighter. I ignored Irina for a moment. Zenovia, you have another sword besides your Excalibur, don't you? Yes, I do. How do you? Give Irina your Excalibur fragment, I said. What? Irina, listen. I want you to accompany my friend Asia to the Kuaha Academy. She's waiting outside this chapel, and I trust you to keep her safe. You two must take the Excalibur parts. Inform Sana Citrai of this plan, and she will hide the fragments in a place that not even Cockabile can reach. That's the only way he'll be able to complete Excalibur. Irina seemed to hesitate for a moment, but when she saw me activate the boosted gear, she realized the importance of the task I had given her. Right. I'll do it. But remember, if you try anything against us. Don't worry, if everything goes wrong, this city will cease to exist and I'll be dead. Irina nodded to Zenovia, who hesitated for a moment, but finally handed over the destroyer Excalibur. A soft glow emanated from the blade as it passed from one to the other, a sacred light. Guard it well, Zenovia whispered. You can leave it to me. Irina said and walked towards the exit. Before she left, she took a last look around. Now it's just the two of us, Zenovia said and turned to me. Let's get this over with. Boost. Drake yelled. I suddenly picked Zenovia up, surprising her, and ran towards a stained glass window in the room. What are you doing? Put me down now. We have to be quick. We can't waste any time. Then why not go out the front door? Because it's in the opposite direction of where we're going. We left the chapel through a shattered stained glass window and headed for the church at the top of the hill. It was an early evening like any other, or so it seemed to the ordinary people, but to me the air was heavy, almost as if the city itself was holding its breath in anticipation of what was to come. Many devils flew over the city, searching for Kiba. It would have been nice to warn Sana Issei and Rias Gremory about what was about to happen, about Crocodile and the plan to destroy the city, but they would have asked too many questions and I wouldn't have been able to answer them all without compromising myself. As we quickly climbed the hill, the abandoned church with its small Gothic towers finally appeared before us. The windows were dark, but suddenly sounds came from inside the church, sounds of explosions, breaking glass, and magical lightning. Akeno and Rias were definitely already fighting inside. It's happening. They've already started. Zenovia said. Before I could answer, I felt a presence behind us. Still holding Zenovia on my lap, I jumped forward and turned around to see a woman with huge black wings, her feet gently resting on the ground. She was beautiful, with long dark brown hair, but she had an expression that exuded sadism. She wore an outfit that left little to the imagination, but her seductive appearance couldn't hide the threatening aura that emanated from her. She was Rainare, or Yuma, as I knew her briefly before I discovered her true identity. She was the fallen angel who took my life when I came to this world. So it seems that the rumors are true. You really are alive, even after killing Razor Phoenix. It must be very nice to have a master with blood ties to Satan. That gives you privilege in the underworld, right? Rainare. Have you come to finish what you started? No, you are not my target today. I'm here for a much more important reason. However, there's nothing stopping me from having a little fun with you. Rainare's feet touched the ground softly, and her eyes looked me up and down with malice. But not the kind of malice I liked. The closed smile that formed on her lips was cruel, and I knew that what came next would be a fight to the death. Rainare had huge black wings that showed her heritage, and she didn't seem to be trying to hide them. Anyway, you know you shouldn't be here, Leonard. This is fallen angel territory, Rainare said. I'm here for a reason and you know it, Rainare. I'm not going to let you and Crocodile do whatever you want with this town. You shouldn't even be here. Rias was very clear when she drove you out and killed that priest. Rainare laughed at my answer, a bitter, shrill laugh. Do you really think you can give us orders and we'll just obey? We're fallen angels, the kind that even the God of the Bible couldn't restrain with its ideological and humanitarian chains. Besides, what kind of look is that? You really think you can take me on, don't you? Ha ha ha. I killed you once, and frankly, I see no reason not to do it again here and now. The last ally of yours who underestimated me had to beg for help and is no longer in heaven, earth, or hell. I'm not the same boy you met last time. I shook my left hand, which was covered in boosted gear. Are you kidding? You're just a veer. Rainare said as she started sniffing the air with a debauched expression. Wait, you're not a virgin anymore. Zenovia, who was standing next to me, raised her eyebrows and blushed. A smile appeared on my face and I crossed my arms. Like I said, I'm not the same anymore. The expression of debauchery and malice on Rainare's face quickly changed to one of clear anger and hatred. Her forehead furrowed and sharp teeth appeared in her mouth. Her face was slightly red, but with a serious expression, Zenovia began to walk toward Rainare. She held out her right hand, and a portal appeared in front of her palm. I can handle her, Zenovia said as she put a hand into the portal, but I put a hand on her shoulder to stop her. No. Your place is inside, helping Rias and Akeno. Crocodile should be coming soon, and they need all the help they can get. Zenovia hesitated, her grey eyes reflecting the indecision she felt. But you. I'll take care of her. Trust me. Don't die, she whispered before running towards the church. I knew that the battle inside the church had already begun and that time was against us. When I turned back to Rainare, she had a scornful look on her face. How foolish. Do you really think you can stop me while she runs off to help her friends? How pathetic. I sighed. It may be pathetic for you, because you have nothing of value. Rainare narrowed her eyes. If you want, I'll make sure your last moments are memorable. Let's see how much you can really take, child. She held up one of her hands, and an intense light began to form between her fingers, taking the shape of a spear. I recognized it, a spear of light, the same weapon that had pierced my belly the last time we fought. Prepare to die, she said before throwing the spear straight at me. I moved instinctively, activating boosted gear at just the right moment. Boost. Drake's scream echoed in my mind, instantly boosting my power. With my newfound strength, I dodged to the side, and the spear flew past me, ripping through the air with a sharp crack and hitting the ground behind me, where it shattered in a burst of light. Rainare seemed surprised that I had managed to dodge and gave me no time to rest. In the blink of an eye, she was upon me. Her black wings gave her impressive speed. Another spear appeared in her hand, and she swung it with force, aiming for my heart again. I was ready. I raised my right arm, using the boosted gear as a shield. The spear struck the red and gold surface of the boosted gear, and sparks flew around us as the holy light and draconic energy collided. Rainoray flew backwards, surprised that I had dodged and blocked her attacks. Interesting. Looks like you're not as weak as I thought. I told you, I'm not the same as before. I replied, lunging at her with a boosted gear-coated blow. She dodged easily as her wings pushed her aside. You may have gotten stronger, but being a little faster isn't enough to stay alive against me. She shouted, summoning several light spears above her head and firing them in quick succession. I was still low on boosts, so I wasn't as strong as when I fought Razor. So I couldn't afford to get hit. I ran to the side, feeling the heat of the spears passing dangerously behind me. One exploded as it hit the ground in front of me, throwing me backwards with the force of the explosion. I scrambled to my feet, but it was too late. Rainoray was already on top of me, her spear pointed straight at my chest. It's over, she shouted with a cruel smile before thrusting the spear forward. The pain was immediate. The holy light burned my flesh as the spear pierced my chest. The force of the blow knocked me to the ground, and the spear pierced through my body, burying itself in the ground beneath me. Rainoray laughed, a loud, satisfied laugh as she looked down at me. Finally. You should have stayed dead the first time, boy. But I was something she hadn't expected. I smiled, a crooked smile, as she looked at me. Do you think a spear like that will kill me? Rainoray's laughter stopped abruptly. She looked at me, confused. What? It hurts, a lot, but it doesn't affect me that much, not anymore. Rainoray's eyes widened as she saw me touch and lift the spear. That's not possible. You're a devil, a spear of light should. I don't have a devil's heart. Slowly, I began to pull it out, feeling the flesh burn around the holy blade. Rainoray took a step back. The confidence she had once exuded was now replaced by shock and fear. This shouldn't be happening. You should die. Sorry to disappoint you, but this time I won't go down so easily. Rainoray's fear was as visible in her frightened eyes as it was in her body language, causing her to quickly take several steps back. She shook her head negatively, trying to dispel the fear that began to take hold of her heart the moment I grabbed the spear of light carved into my chest and began to pull it out. The holy light tore through my flesh and bone, and it hurt so much that I felt my vision blur, but it was no longer enough to kill me. I had become much stronger than I had ever been before. When I finally pulled out the spear, I used the power of destruction I had copied from Rias' Gremory, and the spear began to disintegrate in my hand. Rainoray was even more startled to see me do this, and the confidence she had previously boasted about was completely shattered. Aren't you a devil? My head tilted to the side. More or less. My body is that of a devil, but my heart, well, it's not mine anymore. Damn you! She started to conjure another spear. Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to concentrate the necessary energy, for she had already conjured many spears. Boost. Once again, Drake gave me another boost, increasing my power even more. My muscles filled with strength, my mind cleared, and my confidence grew. Finally, Rainoray managed to create a new light spear and hurled it in my direction with an angry scream. But I was prepared. I moved with a speed that caught her off guard, dodging the attack and advancing on her. My boosted gear-coated fist struck her in the stomach with a force that knocked the air out of her lungs in a single gasp. She was thrown backwards, bouncing off the ground several times. Rainoray rose, staggering as blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. Her gaze was fixed on me, and I saw the terror in her eyes. How did you get so strong? You're the bearer of the damned sacred gear and... I took a step forward and, for the first time, I started to get angry with her. Fucking sacred gear? Boosted gear is the best sacred gear. That's right, Leo. Boost. Another yell from Drake. At that moment, Rainoray felt the pressure in the air increase and flapped her black wings frantically. At that moment, my devil wings finally appeared, maybe a little different from most devils, because they were huge and had red details, maybe because I had Drake's heart. Time to use that other ability. I said and raised a finger to the sky. At that moment, a large black cloud appeared over the church and a bolt of lightning descended from the heavens as if it were a divine command, tearing through the atmosphere with a deafening sound. When the lightning struck Rainoray, the brightness was so intense that I had to close my eyes for a moment. The smell of burnt ozone mixed with the air already charged with the metallic smell of blood. When I slowly opened my eyes, Rainoray was lying on the ground, her body shaking and convulsing in pain. Smoke rose from her burned skin, and the fear in her eyes was mixed with pain. Akeno's power is much stronger than I thought. For a moment, I looked at her with a feeling of superiority, as if I were the judge and she was the one sentenced to death. I could end it right now. She deserved it. After all she'd done, and because she felt no remorse, there was no room for mercy. This is the end, Rainare. I said in a cold voice as I landed in front of her. The power of destruction began to form in my hand, red and glowing like a small star about to expand. Rainare looked at me with wide eyes. She knew what was coming. She knew this was her end. But before I could deliver the blow that would finish her, the sound of shattering glass filled the air. Instinctively, I looked away to see a church window shatter into 1,000 pieces and a shadowy figure fly out of the space once filled with stained glass. Donazek, a fallen angel with black, almost plucked wings, held a sword in each hand as he appeared to flee. However, his face was covered in soot, his hair was spiky, and he looked as if he had been shocked several times. But what caught my eye was the sword he was carrying. It wasn't just any sword. I could feel the power emanating from it. It was golden and large. A power that I could only describe as monstrous. Without a doubt, this is Excalibur. So they still managed to reassemble the pieces they had? But how does an angel carry it? Donazek looked a little confused, not knowing where to go with the sword. It wasn't long before he noticed me standing in the middle of the field in front of the church, and then his eyes rested on the fallen angel on the ground. His eyes fell on Rainare, and for a brief moment, a look of disappointment crossed his face. Rainare! He muttered, as if talking to himself. Without another word, the fallen angel raised his sword and threw it at Rainare. The blade sliced through the air with a whirring sound before plunging into her side. The sword was magnificent, glowing with a golden light that seemed to consume the surrounding darkness. 5 Excaliburs merged into one. It wasn't as powerful as the one in the anime because it didn't have the Excalibur mimic, but it was still very powerful. Rainare looked at the sword with wide eyes, surprised and grateful. She grabbed the hilt, and immediately the golden light from the blade began to spread through her body. The wounds she had suffered began to close, the lightning burn disappeared, and the power returned to her body as if it had never been drained. Within a second, she was back on her feet, more powerful than ever, wielding a weapon that could terrify even the most powerful of beings. Normally, only very special people could carry holy swords, because it fought not only devils, but all supernatural creatures, and especially evil ones. So how could Rainare use it and still heal? The golden aura emanating from Excalibur was pure intensity, and when Rainare stood up with the sword, I immediately realized that its power had been amplified. Rainare slung the sword over her shoulder and began to radiate an aura of contempt again, as if she had suddenly regained all her lost confidence. You're finished now, you bastard! Rainare shouted with a fury that seemed to have been revived by the flames of the sword. This is the true power of a fallen angel. Look what I can do now. She raised Excalibur above her head, as if about to deliver the final blow that she believed would bring her victory. This is going to be tricky, I thought. Although my body was resistant, I knew that a single direct blow from this blade could be fatal, even for someone of my current strength. Boost! Drake's scream echoed in my mind as a reminder that I was not alone in this fight. So I activated Scale Mail. The red, metallic plates began to cover my body, one by one, like a second skin. Each segment of the armor vibrated with the accumulated power of the boosts I had received, making me not only stronger, but more resilient than ever. The scale mail was my ace up my sleeve, the protection that could keep Excalibur from tearing me to shreds. Rainare's eyes widened at the sight of my armor. But instead of flinching, she gave me her grim smile again. You think this armor will save you? Nothing can stop the power of Excalibur. She shouted and flew at me. The blade came down in a deadly arc, slicing through the air with a terrifying whir. I blocked the attack with my scale mail-covered forearm, feeling the impact reverberate through my body. Excalibur's power was overwhelming, but the scale mail held and absorbed the shock. This armor is made from the scales of the mightiest dragon. I expected nothing less. Of course, I'm amazing, Leo. Still, the holy blade left a visible mark on the armor, proving that the sword's power was not to be underestimated. Before Rainare could attack again, I moved, taking advantage of her moment of hesitation. I turned my body and fired a blow at her abdomen, using the power of the boosted gear and a small explosion to amplify the impact. It threw her far away, and she only stopped when she used her wings to balance herself in the air. You think you can beat me? Rainare shouted, raising her sword again. I am a fallen angel. I am a superior being, made to dominate. You are nothing but a devil, a filthy, despicable creature. She advanced again, attacking with blind fury. I blocked and dodged these attacks as best I could, feeling the pressure of the attacks increase by the second. Scale mail stopped most of them, but it was dangerous to keep it up for long. Each Excalibur attack, even if blocked, pushed me backwards, and the wounds on my armor began to multiply. The power you're so proud of is not yours. You're just a shadow using something you shouldn't. I warned her. Shut up! She roared, raising her sword for another strike. Rainare screamed insults and curses at my name, but it was past the point where I could respond rationally. She was nothing more than a being consumed by the rage she felt at seeing me so close to her level of power. Suddenly, however, something changed. Excalibur began to vibrate in her hands, as if resisting Raineray's control. She tried to steady her grip on the hilt, but the sword shook again, and the golden light surrounding it began to pulse erratically. Raineray took a step back, her eyes wide in confusion. What's happening? She whispered, looking at the blade as it began to behave strangely, as if it were alive and rejecting its bearer. It was then that the first cracks appeared on Raineray's skin. Small, almost imperceptible, but they spread quickly, like spider webs branching out all over her body, or like a vase shattering in slow motion. Raineray dropped her sword to the ground and stared at her hands in horror as the skin began to split, revealing an intense light underneath. She fell to her knees, horror and pain on her face. She tried to get up, but her muscles wouldn't respond and the cracks began to widen. No, this can't be. I'm a fallen angel. I can't die like this. No. Her voice trembled between tears as her body was destroyed from within by the holy energy of the sword. Suddenly, thunder rumbled in the distance, and the atmosphere suddenly became even heavier. The clouds above us churned violently, the sky turned red, and a resounding voice echoed through the sky. Raineray, you incompetent fool! I looked up to see an imposing figure hovering high in the air. It was a being with 10 outstretched black wings, and the power emanating from it was overwhelming even from a distance. It was a power so tremendous that it made me feel insignificant. Cockabile! Raineray stammered. Please, help me. I can. Silence. Cockabile's voice was relentlessly cold. You failed. You used a power that was not meant for you, and now you will pay the price for your arrogance. I gave you a clear command, my subjects. Yet you disobeyed. Excalibur was to be used when our chimera was born. But. No but. I'll give you a quick end as a reward for your services. Die. With a snap of his fingers, Cockabile made an extremely powerful light spear appear under Raineray's head. She had neither the strength nor the time to react before it crushed her like nothing. Now, bearer of the Red Dragon Empress, hand over Excalibur and I'll consider sparing your life. I looked up at the reddish sky, where Cockabile's overwhelming presence loomed over me like the shadow of fate itself. He was an imposing figure, with 10 black wings stretching from his back like a cloak of death, and the power emanating from him was suffocating with an almost palpable pressure that made the surrounding air vibrate. Raineray, who until a few moments ago had considered herself invincible, had been reduced to dust before my eyes by a simple gesture from her superior. Now, Cockabile's gaze was fixed on me, and even with my scale mail activated, I felt a shiver run down my spine. Cockabile was not like the other enemies I had faced. This creature was undoubtedly far more powerful than anything I had ever faced, including my personal challenge of killing a phoenix. Fear began to creep into my mind, a visceral sensation that tried to overwhelm me, forcing me to reconsider every move, every decision. What am I doing? This power is far beyond my reach. Fear not, Leo. He may be strong, but remember, you carry my power, the power of the Red Dragon Emperor. There is nothing to fear. Drake said, calming my fears. I closed my fists inside the armor and felt the boosted gear and the power it gave me. Drake was right. This was no time to hesitate. Cockabile might be powerful, but I had a plan. And most importantly, I wasn't alone. You're right, Drake. We must move forward. There was no more room for doubt or fear. There was only one way forward, and I was ready to take it, regardless of the risks. With a slight nod, I released the scale mail. The armor shattered into energy particles that vanished into thin air. The absence of the armor made me feel exposed, vulnerable, but, at the same time, it gave me a strange feeling of freedom. It was necessary for the next step. Cockabile raised an eyebrow and his sharp eyes immediately noticed the change in my posture. It was then that I began to walk towards Excalibur, which was lying on the ground. The holy sword was still there, embedded in the grass, emitting a golden aura that seemed to vibrate irregularly. There was something about it, a pulsating energy that seemed to echo Raineray's suffering, as if the blade had been contaminated by the essence of its former bearer. It looked like a cursed sword that had rejected its bearer when she was unworthy of its power. I held out my hand, thinking at the same time. Drake, I will give you my left arm forever. I accept, Leo. My arm was completely enveloped by the boosted gear, and the scales that enveloped my arm literally replaced my skin instead of overlapping it. I grasped the handle of Excalibur with ease. Even though I had the arm of a dragon, an uncomfortable warmth ran up my arm and into my shoulder. It was as if the sword was trying to connect with me, probing my soul to see if I was worthy of its power. I felt Raineray's pain and despair echo through the blade, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I accepted the weight of that energy, absorbing it and letting it become a part of me. Cockabile watched with a curious look, but something in his expression suggested that he was slightly impressed. Or maybe just curious. Either way, he didn't move, staying in the same place, waiting to see what I would do next. He was testing my limits, seeing how far I could go before his power overwhelmed me. With Excalibur in my hand, I spread my demonic wings and began to slowly fly toward him. For some reason, using my wings was easy and natural, as if I had been born with the ability. When I was high in the sky, I heard the sound of shattering glass. I turned in the air just in time to see two figures being thrown out of the church, hurled through two large stained glass windows and shattered into thousands of pieces of colored glass. Two fallen angels hit the ground outside the church with a violent thud, and two more figures emerged through the shattered stained glass. Rias, Gremory and Hypnosis flew out of the shattered windows and hovered above the fallen angels. Then the great door of the church opened with a creak, and Zenobia dragged Valper Galilei's body out. She looked exhausted. Zenobia saw me in the air, with Excalibur in my hands, and then looked even higher. Her eyes widened at the sight of Cockabile floating in the sky, his 10 black wings outstretched and his gaze full of arrogance. "Leo, what are you doing?" Rias asked softly, looking at me. "Leo." Akeno got off the ground and flew towards me. "Ah ha ha ha. You're screwed. Cockabile is here." I looked at her. There were so many things I wanted to say, but the words seemed to slip out, the urgency of the situation stifling any attempt to explain my intentions. So I smiled, a smile I hoped would convey trust. "Do you trust me?" I asked. Rias didn't hesitate for a moment and answered with a slight nod, "Yes, we do." Akeno also nodded in agreement. "Then let me take care of it," I continued, looking back at Cockabile, who now seemed to be enjoying herself. "I know what I'm doing." Cockabile let out a deep laugh. "This is hilarious. A low-class demon with a holy sword trying to take on one of heaven's greatest generals. Do you really think you can beat me, boy? It doesn't matter if you have boosted gear or not. I'll take it for myself after I kill you." Cockabile's voice was harsh, self-centered, and irritating. I knew that I was facing an immense power, a being that had fought in heavenly wars and had thousands of years of battle experience. He was more than just a fallen angel, he was a legend among fallen angels, and for many he represented the rebellion that the war was over. Next to him, I was nothing. I was only 18 at the time, 21 mentally. To Cockabile, that was a breath, so there was usually nothing I could do in front of such a powerful being. However, I wasn't alone. I had the Red Dragon Empress as my partner, so I had nothing to fear. "Do you really think you can defeat me, boy? It doesn't matter if you have boosted gear or not. I'll take it for myself after I kill you," Cockabile said, showing his pointed teeth while laughing. Then he shot his body at me at breakneck speed. There was no time to think, only to react. On impulse, I raised Excalibur to my chest and the sword struck the spear of light that Cockabile had conjured. Golden and black sparks spread around us, and I was immediately pushed back by Cockabile's overwhelming power. But I didn't let myself be pushed to the ground. Flapping my wings, I resisted in the air. "Fear not, Leo. Boost." Cockabile retreated, only to strike again, this time with a series of rapid attacks, each strike with a force that seemed capable of shattering mountains. Despite this, Excalibur moved in my hands with almost preternatural precision, as if I knew Cockabile's fighting patterns and was 2 steps ahead of him. I had virtually no experience with swordsmanship, but I could see Cockabile's movements, and it was as if every martial arts anime I watched had trained my eyes in how to react to certain situations. I defended, I countered, and even though my movements were instinctive, Excalibur did the heavy lifting, absorbing most of the kinetic energy of the blows. The metallic sound of the clashing blades echoed through the sky, and the pressure of each blow sent shockwaves through the clouds and shook the leaves of the trees below us. With each new exchange of blows, I felt the latent pain in my muscles intensify. Cockabile was much stronger and faster than me, and his power, accumulated over millennia, was something I could barely begin to comprehend. Boom! Suddenly, Cockabile jumped back a few meters with an arrogant smile on his face. "I expected more from the famous boosted gear. Or maybe you're as pathetic as you look, kid." Ignoring the taunt, I raised Excalibur in guard. "Calm down, don't be rash. I'm just warming up." At that moment, I extended my right forefinger to the sky. The clouds that we had driven away with the shock of our battle quickly began to gather above us. Cockabile frowned as he looked up, curious. The sky darkened and black clouds gathered above the church, swirling in a vortex of pure energy. At that moment, a storm of lightning began to form above us, making the air crackle with static electricity. "This is the power of..." "How brave, boy! How brave!" Cockabile laughed. "How do you know this magic?" "This is the magic of the legendary fallen angel named Barakil. No, for me, this power is that of Akeno Hypnosis. It has nothing to do with this Barakil," I said. Cockabile laughed again, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Akeno Hypnosis? Ah, yes. Barakil's daughter. So she's the one who somehow taught you this skill? Kid, I know every nuance of that power better than you ever will. But not with this intensity. With a war cry, I threw my hand forward, and a gigantic bolt of lightning descended from the sky, tearing through the air with a deafening sound. The lightning struck Cockabile directly, enveloping him in an explosion of white and yellow light that blinded my eyes for a moment. When the light finally dissipated, I saw Cockabile still standing, surrounded by a black aura. The smile on his face was gone. He was leaning forward a little, and clearly the blow had done considerable damage. You're annoying, kid. I'm Cockabile. One of the Gregory. Don't you dare underestimate me. He raised his hand to the sky, and a spear of black light formed in his palm. With one swift movement, he hurled the spear at me. It was a potentially deadly attack. I could feel the power of destruction concentrated in that spear, destined to destroy me once and for all. I moved Excalibur to block, but before I could react, Cockabile was on me. I was thrown to the ground, shattering the roof of the church and the marble of the palace floor as Excalibur fell from my hands. Get up, Leo. Boost. With Herculean effort, I got to my feet. I didn't have enough time to recover, though, as the walls and ceiling of the church were suddenly swept away in a whirlwind. This happened thanks to the flapping of Cockabile's wings as he slowly descended from the sky. I won't be able to defeat him. I've been rushed, I haven't evolved enough to fight him, and it's taking its toll. Drake, I want you to take other parts of my body. That way I can defeat him and go back to my life with my harem, right? Leo, I can do that. However, it will require at least your 2 legs and 1 more arm, because as you receive more of my power, your human body will quickly begin to transform into parts of a dragon. I know, but it's my fault. I didn't train hard enough. If I had honed my body even more, I could withstand more of your power without my body parts transforming. No, boy. Even among the most powerful devils, few could withstand that much of my power. My apologies don't matter now, but whether or not I can defeat Cockabile. You're right, boy. So I will. Leonard, what are you doing, you idiot? I heard a voice, and when I took my eyes off Cockabile, raised them to half height and had to lower them even further, I suddenly saw a little white-haired girl with an angry expression. You want to beat him alone? Don't be so selfish as to sacrifice yourself thinking that no one cares about you. Konako shouted as he looked at me. Kiba, now! After Konako, Kiba appeared in a flash with his sword already drawn. His expression was serious and he seemed determined. Leonard, thank you for holding things together until now, and thank you for leaving my revenge to me. But don't think that we will let you fight alone. Kiba and Konako came over and stopped beside me. Konako straightened her arms. We are a team. Don't think you can carry everything on your own. Cockabile's laughter echoed through the shattered remains of the church as he put his feet on the ground. He spread his arms in an almost theatrical gesture and said, Do you really think you can defeat me by joining forces? Even your combined power is no match for me. Suddenly, another bolt of lightning cut through the sky above us and hit the ground with a deafening thud. When I looked up, I saw Konako in her Thunder Priestess outfit. She looked even more beautiful than usual. Don't underestimate the power of a set of demon pieces, Rias said, coming closer as well. Rias. The majesty of Rias Gremory's presence was undeniable, and for the first time, Cockabile seemed to realize the gravity of the situation. You dared to defy the Gremory. You will pay for it, Cockabile. My brother is already on our way. Cockabile's smile remained. What's the point of Surtsk's Lucifer coming if there is no city for him to protect when he arrives? I took a step forward. Surtsk isn't coming to defeat you, he's just coming to take your body. Before he could do anything else, Akeno and Rias shot into the air with impressive speed, like 2 shining arrows. Rias stretched out a hand in front of her, and the power of destruction began to concentrate in her palm, a glowing red ball. Beside her, Akeno summoned a ball of lightning. Cockabile raised an eyebrow, still dismissive of our efforts. Pathetic. This won't help either, he muttered, raising his right hand to absorb and manipulate the coming magical attacks. But while his eyes were fixed on the 2 flying figures, Konako and I moved quickly. Konako, with her unbelievable strength, jumped off the ground with a momentum so powerful that it left a crater where her feet had been. I followed close behind, activating Scale Mail, which covered my body in the red armor of boosted gear. Our timing was impeccable. Soon, Konako was on top of him, delivering a direct blow to his chest. Cockabile managed to react in time, blocking her blow with his arm, but Konako's strength knocked him back a few meters. Then it was my turn. With my fists covered in boosted gear energy, I hit Cockabile with a series of quick punches and kicks. Boost! Boost! You damn bug! Cockabile roared. As he tried to counter, I stepped back to avoid his blow, and to my delight, Kiba was already practically on my side, activating his sacred gear, Sword Birth, and several demonic swords began to fall around us. As the swords fell, creating a rain of blades. I quickly moved to protect Konako. I placed my scale mail-clad body over her to serve as a protective barrier. The swords hit the armor hard, but the scale mail absorbed the impact and protected Konako from any damage. "Oh, thank you, senpai," Konako said, blushing slightly. Rias and Akeno took advantage of Kakabile's moment of distraction. Rias launched his orb of destruction with all his might, and the red explosion crossed the sky, lighting up the battlefield. At the same time, Akeno commanded his lightning bolts, which snaked through the air toward the fallen angel, enveloping him in a storm of pure electricity. For a brief moment, Kakabile was helpless between the power of destruction and the thunder. He defended himself as best he could, but he was rusty and didn't know how to fend off attacks coming from different shapes, sizes, and directions. "Don't move, you bastard!" Kiba yelled, suddenly appearing at Kakabile's side. With the agility of a cat, Kiba struck a swift blow with his sword, the right part of the blade being fire and the other ice. The blade sliced through the air, and Kakabile tried to block it with a makeshift barrier. But Kiba's sword pierced the defense, causing the fallen angel's black blood to gush out like a fountain as his left arm fell. Kakabile flapped her wings and threw Kiba and everyone else backwards with a gust so powerful that it even affected Rias and Akeno's balance in the air. "You, wretches, how dare you!" Kakabile shouted, raising her hands. "I may not be able to complete Excalibur, but if this city disappears and Surtska's dear sister dies, the war will resume and Azazel will have no choice but to march alongside me to finish off the devils and angels." At that moment, an oppressive amount of power began to accumulate between Kakabile's hands. It was so much power that I could feel the air around me becoming heavy, as if the atmosphere itself was feeling all this power condensing. "This isn't good," I muttered, realizing that he was preparing a final attack, a blow that would probably destroy everything around us and the whole of Kuaha City. A wave of flashbacks invaded my mind, and my limbs became lethargic for a second. Could I really not be strong enough to hold everything together? But suddenly, before Kakabile could release all that energy, Akeno descended from the sky like a personified thunderbolt, his hair and clothes fluttering in the wind. "I won't let you do that. I want to at least have Leonard's child before I die," she shouted, reaching out her hand and releasing a powerful electrical discharge that hit Kakabile directly, breaking her concentration. Akeno acted, but she wasn't the only one. With a blink, everyone moved to stop Kakabile. Konako lunged forward with a devastating blow, hitting Kakabile in the stomach so hard that he collapsed in half. At the same moment, Kiba, who had been standing next to me, was teleported by a magic circle from Rias to above Kakabile's head, from where he drove his sword into his enemy's shoulder. I was further back, but I couldn't just watch, so I stepped forward and yelled, "Juggernaut, now, Drake!" As I flew, I felt my armor grow considerably in size and power. "You can only hold this mode for 3 seconds, Leo. That's more than enough," I thought as I struck Kakabile with the gigantic fist of the scale mail that had transformed into a juggernaut, using all the energy I had left to push him hard to the ground. The impact of my blow on Kakabile reverberated through every corner of the forest. The ground beneath Kakabile's feet cracked into a web of cracks, and I completely shattered the armor he was wearing. The monumental weight of the juggernaut drive crushed my bones, muscles, and mind, and every second I used it felt like my life energy was being sucked out by an insatiable black hole. Still, I didn't stop. At that moment, I activated the only 2 spells I knew, using both the thunder I had copied from Akeno and Rias Gremory's power of destruction. Just like that, my fist glowed red as lightning bolts shot out of it. Kakabile's body trembled under the force of my attack, and for a brief moment, I saw the terror in his eyes. He, who had been so proud of his power, who had mocked us all with his arrogant confidence, was now just another fallen opponent, crushed by the power he had underestimated. With one last effort, I channeled all my remaining power into the juggernaut's drive, feeling the searing heat of the boosted gear envelop my arm like liquid fire. The dragon's fist came down on Kakabile's body like a hammer, burying him deeper into the cracked and broken ground. The explosion of power from the final blow was deafening, sending a shockwave across the field and extinguishing the last embers of the surrounding battle. Then there was silence. I slowly raised my fist. The huge red arm of the juggernaut drive trembled with the effort required for this final blow. When I finally withdrew my fist, I saw what was left of Kakabile. His body was disfigured, his once imposing and cruel face now an unrecognizable mass of broken flesh and bone. He was immobile, and the menacing aura he once exuded was completely gone. Kakabile, a high-ranking fallen angel, had been defeated. The sight of his destroyed body, crushed by my power, should have given me a sense of victory. But all I felt was exhaustion. My breathing was heavy, and I knew my time in the juggernaut drive was over. "Well done, Leo. You did it. I'm very proud of you." I felt the armor begin to disintegrate, the red plates receding like a tide until they left my skin exposed to the cold night air. As the last bit of armor disappeared, my body gave in to exhaustion. My strength left me at once, and for a moment I thought I would fall flat on my face. But to my surprise, I felt something soft and warm support me. My eyes, heavy with effort, opened just enough to see a red head around me, and a familiar, comforting scent enveloped me. I fell into Rias Gremory's arms. The feel of her arms around me was like a balm to my exhausted mind and body. I felt my face pressed against her breasts and, for a moment, the whole world was reduced to the warmth she radiated as she held me. Leonard. Rias said in a trembling voice. I tried to smile as I lifted my head, but I was so exhausted that I barely managed. I think, we made it. Without warning, Rias leaned forward and kissed me eagerly. When my momentary surprise passed, I grabbed the back of her head and enjoyed her soft lips against mine. As soon as our lips parted, the muffled sound of a surprised sigh brought me back to reality. To the side, I saw Kiba and Konako looking at us in surprise. Konako knew about me and Akeno. But there was no way she knew about Rias. And Kiba didn't know anything. Zenovia, who until then had been holding Valper Galilei with her feet on his back, also looked very surprised and a little flushed. But what surprised me was Akeno's reaction. She was watching everything from a short distance and unlike the others who were surprised by Rias' gesture, Akeno seemed to have expected it, as if she had known all along what was going to happen. With a smile that showed both amusement and tenderness, she approached us. Ah, Rias. You can't keep him all to yourself, you know, Akeno said. Then Akeno pulled me closer and her breasts pressed against me as hard as Rias. At that moment, I was literally trapped between them, almost out of breath. Hey, you had your chance, Akeno. Akeno laughed softly. I know. But I can't let you have all the fun, can I? Girls, calm down, calm down. I muttered, my voice weak. Me and the Occult Research Club, or rather most of its members, had successfully defeated Cockabile, one of the most powerful fallen angels in existence. It was a feat so astounding that it would likely shake the foundations of the three factions for days, maybe months. When Surtsk's Lucifer arrived, he embraced his sister, glad that she was alive and safe, then approached Cockabile's body and with a simple gesture lifted Cockabile's body off the ground as if it were as light as a feather and bound it in black chains that glowed with a dark energy. But it wasn't just Cockabile that caught Surtsk's attention. Valper Galilei, the traitor to the church, was bound and subdued by Zenovia. His attempts to free himself were futile, but knowing that he would be taken to the underworld, his tongue was as sharp as ever. With a bitter voice, he began to shout, trying to provoke Kiba to kill him. He spoke of revenge, of wanting to see Kiba succumb to his hatred for the Excalibur project, but Kiba, with a calmness I hadn't expected, just watched in silence. Kiba didn't give in to the provocation. Instead, he calmly announced that what awaited Valper Galilei in the underworld would be far worse than death. Galilei, realizing that his words were not having the desired effect, cried out in despair and revealed something that would shake the world for all of us. Peace is useless. God is dead, he exclaimed, and his words fell like a curse, for it was a truth no one wanted to hear. That's why I betrayed the church, that's why I joined Cockabile. There is no sense in peace and life if God doesn't exist. Surtsk, who had kept a serious face until then, sighed deeply. With a gesture, he tightened the chains holding Valper Galilei and led the traitor to the underworld. Zenovia fell to her knees on the floor. The news that God was dead seemed to have drained all meaning from her existence. Her expression was a mixture of disbelief, pain, and a deep sense of emptiness. For someone who had dedicated her entire life to faith, the idea that the central figure of that faith was dead was devastating. She stayed there, kneeling on the floor, while we didn't know exactly what to say to her. I think I should be the one to take the news back to Asia. I said to Rias while being held up by her helper. Rias nodded in agreement. The fine, golden sand of the beach spread out beneath my feet, warmed by the midday sun shining brightly in the cloudless sky. The rhythmic sound of the waves breaking on the shore brought a sense of tranquility that was in stark contrast to the chaos and violence we had experienced days before. The sea stretched out before me on a vast blue carpet. Rias said that the best way for all of us to recover from the stress of fighting Cockabile was to take the trip we had promised ourselves after the stressful situation with Razor Phoenix. After all we've been through, we need to regain our strength. She had said with a smile that, even though I was tired, still managed to warm my heart. And frankly, I had no argument with it. My body still ached in ways I didn't know were possible. So I sat in a beach chair, somewhat relaxed. From my vantage point, I could perfectly see the scene of Rias, Akeno, Konako, Zenovia, and Asia, all dressed in bikinis that showed off their perfect curves, playing beach volleyball on a makeshift court. As expected, Zenovia joined the Occult Research Club after hearing of God's death. She reincarnated as a devil, and I won her heart because she became a colleague of mine. Asia didn't react well to the news about God either, but she didn't cry too much because she said her faith was still alive. So on that sunny, warm day, Her laughter mingled with the sound of the waves and the rustling of the palm trees beside us, and it felt like paradise to me. Rias, in her red bikini that perfectly matched her blonde hair, stood opposite Akeno, who wore a black bikini. The two were the captains of their respective teams and exchanged competitive glances as one attacked the other. Ria's every jump made her long hair float in the air, and Akeno's movements seemed designed to seduce, as her huge breasts quickly aroused me. Konako, with her usual serious face and simple white bikini, was next to Rias, and despite her shorter stature, she jumped high and hit hard to cut the ball back to the other side. On the other side, next to Akeno, Zenovia, in a blue bikini, showed her brute strength with every serve and defense. She still didn't have much control over the super strength she had just gained by becoming a devil. Asia, for her part, seemed oblivious to everything but the game. Her aqua bikini matched her golden eyes and hair, and she smiled brightly with every point her team scored, even though she didn't help her team win much. Seeing Asia smile like that brought me a little peace. She, who had always been the sweetest and purest among us, deserved moments of happiness like that. Leonard, why don't you join us? Rias asked as she adjusted her bikini bottoms. I was about to agree when I remembered that I was hard and at least sitting down would allow me to hide it a bit. I think I'll just watch for now. I'm still recovering. Irera, don't tell me you're afraid of losing to me, Leo, Akeno teased with a mischievous smile. She knew exactly how to tease me and she did it with a mastery that sometimes left me speechless. Maybe I'm just giving you a chance to shine. At that moment, I noticed Kiba approaching. He was coming from the direction of the beach kiosk, carrying 2 bottles of juice. As he approached me, he handed me one of the bottles with a smile. Looks like you're having fun. He commented as he sat down in the lounge chair next to me. Recovering, actually, I replied, accepting the bottle of juice and taking a sip. The cold liquid went down my throat and brought relief from the heat of the day. Kiba looked out to sea and let out a satisfied sigh. It's great to be here, at the beach. After all, we've been through, we deserve it. I silently agreed with a nod. He was right, after the fighting and the chaos, moments like this were precious. To be honest, I didn't think we'd be able to defeat Cockabile and find the Excaliburs. I owe you a lot, Leonard. If it weren't for your efforts, we wouldn't have been able to capture Valper Galilei, and I wouldn't have done justice to my fellow friends. Now he will suffer greatly in the underworld. I only did what was necessary. But I feel bad not knowing what happened to most of the Excaliburs. We got them back, but they disappeared as quickly as they appeared, except for Zenovia's and Irina's ones. That's nothing for you to worry about, Leonard. I'm responsible for the Excaliburs, and my mission now is simple, find their whereabouts and make sure the other 5 are destroyed. I will serve Rias forever, protecting her and taking care of the responsibilities I have been given. Rias is lucky to have a knight like you at her side. I said sincerely, knowing how much Kiba meant to her and the group. He was more than just an ally, he was a friend, someone we could all trust, even if I didn't like him very much because he was so handsome. Kiba finally looked away from the sea and at me. You know, Leonard. I never imagined that you and Rias could be together. Was that kiss a declaration of marriage? His conclusion surprised me. Not that it was completely unexpected, considering the closeness Rias and I had developed, but the direct way Kiba mentioned it made me almost choke on my juice. We're not together. There's a mutual feeling, maybe, but it's complicated, you know. Kiba gave a small smile, one that indicated that he understood more than he was willing to admit. You don't have to explain, Leonard. This relationship stuff is really complicated. Some days, I get so many love letters that I can hardly find the time to answer them all properly. Damn popular. I muttered. Kiba laughed. In the end, the most important thing is that you two are happy if you love each other, no matter what form it takes. I hope that one day I will be lucky enough to find what you and Rias have. Kiba was surprisingly understanding about my attachment to girls, and that made me like him a little more. I'm dying of heat. Zenovia commented as she approached the sea. I think I'll go for a swim. Good idea. Rias agreed. Then she turned to me and asked with a smile, will you swim with us, Leo? I smiled, but shook my head in denial. I'll stay here for now. Enjoy yourselves for me. They nodded and one by one, the girls ran towards the sea. I watched them as they entered the water. Even Kiba went swimming with them to have some fun. When the others entered the sea, I turned around and saw Akeno, who had been left behind. She approached me with her characteristic mischievous smile. Leo, everyone seems to be having a great time, but I need a little help from you. I looked at her with a raised eyebrow. Oh yes, what can I do for you, Akeno? She leaned slightly towards me, her hands holding a small bottle of tanning oil. The sun reflected off the glass, almost blinding my eyes, but my attention was focused on Akeno's suggestive smile. I need someone to rub oil on my back. Could you do that for me? She asked. My heart jumped in my chest. It was a scene like this I had always hoped for. Sure, why not? I replied. Akeno handed me the bottle, and I got up from the beach chair. Akeno was lying on the nearby deck chair, face down, her head resting on her crossed arms. The black fabric of her bikini contrasted beautifully with her pale skin, and the way her curves were accentuated in the reclining position only increased my desire. I knelt beside her, opened the bottle, and poured some oil into the palm of my hand. The liquid ran between my fingers, viscous and a little warm as I rubbed my hands together to spread it well. Then I began to apply the oil to her back, starting with her shoulders, in firm, circular motions. Akeno's skin was silky soft under my fingers, and I could feel her muscles relaxing as I moved my hands down her back. Ahn. Akeno sighed, closing her eyes and letting herself relax completely under my hands. That feels so good, Leo. You have magic hands. I smiled and continued the massage, spreading the oil over her back and slowly working my way down to the base of her spine. I practiced when I was a little younger. When I reached the waistline, Akeno moved slightly, arching her back in an almost imperceptible movement, but it didn't go unnoticed by me. Don't forget your legs. She murmured. Without hesitation, I put more oil on my hands and began to work on her thighs, feeling the softness of her skin and the firmness of her muscles. My hands moved up and down Akeno's thighs, slowly moving up to her bikini line. Then I decided to explore a little further. My hands moved further up, touching her buttocks lightly, almost like a caress. Akeno didn't react and allowed me to continue. My hands glided deftly over her skin, spreading the golden sheen of the oil. You seem to be enjoying this very much, Akeno, I murmured as I leaned closer, my breath brushing the exposed skin at the nape of her neck. She let out a soft laugh, almost like a purr, without opening her eyes. It's impossible not to like it when you know exactly how to touch me, Leo. The way she spoke, with disarming confidence, only made me smile more. My hands continued to caress the soft skin of her back, but this time with a different intent. I let my fingers trace a gentle line down her spine, back to the base, before moving up again. My hands, now running up the side of her body, brushed her ribs with a light touch. I think I missed an important part, Akeno. Akeno opened one of her eyes, and although the smile at the corner of her lips made it clear that she knew, she asked, "Oh yeah? And which part would that be?" "The front." She laughed again, a soft, melodious sound, before slowly turning over and lying back on the couch. As she did so, her eyes locked with mine, and the smile on her lips widened into something even more provocative. "So, are you going to finish what you started?" My breathing got a little harder as I looked at her body exposed to the sunlight. "Of course I will," I replied. My hands, still oily, now moved to her breasts. I could feel the texture of the bikini fabric against the palm of my hand, but also the firmness of the breasts underneath. I slid my fingers along the edge of the bikini, tracing the outline of the fabric, and noticed that Akeno kept her eyes closed, breathing deeply, as if absorbing every touch, every caress I gave her. But I knew there was a limit to what we could do there. The beach was crowded, and even though we were separated, we weren't alone. I could hear the distant laughter of the girls and Kiba as they frolicked in the sea. If they turned around for a second and saw what Akeno and I were doing, Konako, Zenovia and Asia might not forgive me. I took a deep breath and pulled my hands away. Akeno opened her eyes and I could see a hint of surprise in them. "I think I've got you ready for your tan. Now I'm going to get us some drinks." "Fufu all right, Leo." I ordered 2 cold drinks at the kiosk and watched the other people on the beach while I waited. Families were enjoying the sunny day, children were running around and building sand castles, and couples were walking hand in hand along the boardwalk. When the drinks were delivered, I thanked them and started walking back. At that moment, from a distance, I saw 2 men standing near the deck chair where I had left Akeno. They seemed to be talking to her, but there was something about their posture that disturbed me. The way one of them gestured with his hands, the way Akeno was visibly uncomfortable. This wasn't just a casual conversation. "Come on, you don't have to be so curious," one of the men said. "We just want to know where you're from. What's the problem?" Akeno, with her arms crossed, maintained a cold, almost impassive expression that contrasted with the provocative way she had acted toward me a few minutes earlier. "I told you, I'm not interested." "What? You think you're better than us?" the other man asked, clearly irritated by such a quick rejection. I was already close enough for them to see me, but Akeno was the first to notice my presence. Her eyes softened at the sight of me. "Is there a problem here?" I asked. The 2 men turned to me and looked at me from top to bottom. I could see the judgment in their eyes, the way they noticed my white hair and blue eyes, probably wondering if I was just another foreign tourist. "And who the hell are you?" one of them asked with a condescending smile on his face. "You think you're a hero or something? That's the problem with foreigners coming here." I kept my eyes calm. "What are you talking about?" I'm the boyfriend of the girl you're harassing. For a moment, the man looked surprised, but then his face twisted into a mixture of embarrassment and anger. The other, realizing that the situation was not in his favor, gave his friend a gentle shove and muttered something about how it wasn't worth it. Sorry, we didn't know, one of them said with a quick nod as they both started to walk away, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. I watched them walk away until I was sure they wouldn't come back. Then I turned to Akeno, who was now looking at me with a different gleam in her eyes and flushed cheeks. Before I could ask if she was all right, Akeno grabbed one of my arms. The movement was quick and unexpected, causing me to drop the drinks on the sand. I didn't have time to complain because the next second, Akeno was pulling me towards a more secluded area of the beach, behind some large rocks that blocked the view of the others. When we finally stopped, I saw that Akeno seemed to be even more gripped by some kind of frenetic energy. Without giving me time to think or speak, she turned her back to me, resting one hand on the rock. Her other arm pulled the bottom of her bikini aside, exposing her vagina. I can't wait any longer, Leo. I've been bursting with excitement since you touched me just now. Please put your cock inside me. She said and looked back over her shoulder. The scene in front of me was almost surreal. The sun was shining brightly, bathing her skin in a golden glow, and the sound of the waves in the background seemed almost like an accompaniment to the frantic rhythm of my heart. I felt desire boiling inside of me, a primitive need that seemed on the verge of exploding. I hesitated for a brief second as the awareness of where we were weighed on me, but the sight of Akeno's pussy, the way it ached for me, made any hesitation disappear. This was the kind of moment I had dreamed of for so long, sex in a public place. My right hand slid slowly down the curve of her waist to her hip, feeling the softness of her skin against my fingers. My other hand held my cock, already hardened and throbbing. With the head of my cock, I stroked the entrance to Akeno's pussy, feeling how wet she was, ready for me. The wetness of her vagina was proof of how much she wanted it, how much she needed it. Leo. I could see the gleam in her eyes as she looked back, as if she wanted to devour me right there. The look on Akeno's face, the silent plea she radiated, made me feel a wave of possessiveness. At that moment, she was mine and I wanted to claim her. Akeno gasped when she felt the tip touching her entrance again, and her muscles contracted as if to capture me as quickly as possible. Please. Complying with her request, I penetrated her, entering her with a slow, deep motion. The fit was perfect and Akeno threw her head back at the same time as a moan came from her lips. The sight of Akeno leaning against the rock, her body filled with pleasure just from having my cock inside her, was refreshing. I began to move my hips, thrusting hard against hers. Each thrust of my cock into her went deeper, making her moan. I deliberately tried to keep a pattern of strokes. I thrust 3 times fast and twice a little slower, intensifying each thrust. My hands gripped her hips tightly, pulling her toward me. The seawater came up to my knees when the waves broke a few meters away, but I didn't care. All my concentration was on Akeno and how she gave herself completely to me, moaning loudly and letting her moans be drowned out by the sound of the waves and the sea.